us understand, is R5s. Now, we know that 34 people were killed, probably with R5s or other weapons of war, and there were 76 seriously injured people at Marikana on the 16th. A simple question. How many of the 3,000 people that were gathered there were criminals for the purposes of the inquiry that the Commission is conducting? How many of the 3,000 would you regard as criminals?
Well, I regarded people who were there as people who are on strike, demonstrators, if you like.
You regard them as criminals? Is that what you say? They are criminals?
I said I regarded people who were out there in Marikana as people who were on strike. In other words, people who were demonstrating against.
Were they criminals?
He finished his answer. He said people who were demonstrating against him. He didn't say what they were demonstrating against. So he was giving him a chance to finish his answer.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
The witness hadn't finished his answer. He said people were strikers demonstrating against, and he didn't finish the sentence. So we've given him a chance to finish the sentence.
Were they criminals?
I can't say that. I am saying those were people who were working in some of those mines, and they were out on strike demonstrating.
Did you regard them as criminals?
I never regarded people who were there as criminals.
Good, thank you. So that the people with the R5s, hundreds of them, had no right to shoot at the strikers. Is that right?
Let me put this, my answer to you this way.
Chair. Chair, to object to this, because that's the very question on which this commission is to rule eventually. And in any event, it is common cause that the minister was never in Marikana during the period under question. So to ask this kind of question really is unfair to the witness, Chair.
How do you deal with the objection, Mr. Bezos?
I don't understand the objection, Mr. Chairman. You were the minister.
Objection is it's unfair to ask the minister the question because he wasn't at Marikana at the time, and according to his evidence, he had nothing to do with the planning or the decision to go over to the tactical option. He didn't put it quite like that, but that's effectively an expansion of what he said.
I'll amend the question. It was reported to you that 34 were killed, 76 were seriously injured. Did you regard them as criminals?
He said he didn't, as I understood. Am I correct, Minister?
I have answered.
Yeah.
Did you say that you regarded them as criminals?
He did the opposite.
Oh, I see.
He said he didn't
they were
regard
not
them as
criminals. Very well. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you. So you didn't regard them as criminals, so that we know as a fact that although there were hundreds with arms such as R5s or similar guns among the police, there were no such guns in their possession, the strikers' possession. Do you agree?
Well, I didn't see guns except one and other weapons they were carrying.
Yes.
Other dangerous weapons they were carrying.
So that the statement of Mr. Tsele that use R5s against people with R5s isn't applicable here.
You know, I'm drawn into to stand in judgment on what is being investigated here. Now, am I here on my making opinions on what is reported? Because I don't know, Chair. My understanding is that there were questions which were put before me, and I was told why I'm here. Now, I was never told that I would have to make general commentary and opinions such as the one I'm being asked here. But I'm up for guidance on that.
Mr. Britos and Minister, there are 2 points really. The first is, whatever your own legal people told you you would likely to be asked about doesn't bind the Commission or Council appearing. You can be asked other matters upon which you can be legitimately expected to express an opinion. That's the first point. But the second point is we have, over and over again in this Commission, said that questions shouldn't be asked on matters of opinion, which are for the Commission to decide, except possibly in the case of experts. And if you're asking the witness for his opinion on some of the matters which are before us, I tell you, now, as I've said often in the past, with great respect to the Minister, I'm not really interested in his opinion. We have to form our opinion on the material before us at the end. He may well have views, I'm sure he has, but I'm not sure they will assist us to decide what the correct position is. What you're busy with at the moment is something which you've departed from a little bit, and that is you were dealing with the speeches that he made, comments he made. And I understood it was directed to establish the proposition, if it can be established, that the witness, when he was holding the portfolio that he held at the time, by making statements of the kind he did, may well have contributed to a misunderstanding by the police of their true functions, and that may have somehow contributed to perhaps, I'm not saying this is so, but the argument I think is going to be put up to us, the attitude of mind which caused them to behave as they did. I understood that to be the thrust of the cross-examination. I haven't got a problem with that. But I think to ask the witness his opinion on these broader questions, which we really have to decide, isn't going to help us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a relative question. You were the minister. In terms of the law, you are responsible for any wrong done by your officers. Do you accept that?
So that's an overbroad proposition. The minister would be vicariously liable for all acts done by the members of the police in the course and scope of their duties as such, performance of their duties as such. If they were engaged on frolics of their own, he wouldn't be liable.
Yes.
There would, of course, be a further proposition, sort of almost a constitutional proposition, that even if he's not vicariously liable in delict, he might have some kind of political responsibility for things that happened, subject to the basic provisions that he's referred to earlier in his evidence.
Yeah.
Those are the two. That, with respect, is a more accurate way of stating the proposition. He's not responsible for everything that any policeman did, but he would be responsible civilly, or he would have been at the time, responsible civilly in the law of delict for everything they did in the course and scope of their duties, purported performance of their duties, and he might have a broader political responsibility, which
Yes.
is also relevant in some tangential way.
I am going to submit with respect that the witness is vicariously responsible for the deaths, for the acts committed by his officers, Mr. Chairman. Whom do we sue whenever the police have killed somebody? The Minister of Police, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sure the Minister, when he's Minister of Police, was the defendant in many actions,
Yes.
nomine efficacy, for many things in which he had no knowledge.
Yes.
But on the principles of vicarious liability, the actions were appropriately brought against him in his official capacity as Minister.
Yes. This is why I want to ask him questions about his role on the appointment of the people who were in charge, and more particularly Mr. Scott.
Who?
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
So you're departing from the point, you're now leaving the point that you have been covering up to now, which is...
I was
you may well
leading
feel
up,
that you've got enough...
I was leading up
I see.
whether
Well,
he
carry on.
accepts responsibility for the conduct of Mr. Scott, who arranged for R5s to be used against the crowd.
Well, ask the question you want to ask.
Well, when I started, I explained what the Constitution obliges or enjoins the Minister of Police to do, which is mainly laying the law, laying the foundation, the framework for members of SABC to work on. And that would be found in the policy, determination, formulation, which we were talking about earlier on. It would be found on the implementation of that policy. To the extent that the policy is implemented, or to the extent that the policy is in place, overall as the political head, I would be responsible.
Do you consider yourself responsible for the actions of the officer, Colonel Scott's?
In fairness, you must explain to the witness, before it can be expected to answer the question, what kind of responsibility you have in mind in framing the question as you have done.
Civil and or criminal liability for the deaths. The officer in his office may be responsible for what he did and what he did not do properly.
But I understand
And
that.
the witness is
okay.
vicariously responsible for that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, well, let's get his answer. What do you say to the question you've been asked? Do you regard yourself as responsible for the deaths and presumably the injuries that follows as well? Now, the question is asked in respect of various kinds of responsibility. Do you regard yourself as civilly liable, responsible, or liable in terms of the criminal law? That's the way the question was framed. Is that right?
Yes.
What I know is that as the political head at the time of the police, I would be responsible for all the things the police are doing.
Right. Thank you for that. Now, we know that the plan that was executed on the 16th was formulated by then Lieutenant Colonel Scott. Now, did you know that crowd management was the primary business of POP, the pop group of the police. Did you know that?
If you talk of crowd management, in the strictest sense of crowd management, yes.
Yes. Did you know that Mr. Scott, or Colonel Scott, had no public policing experience at all?
Objection, that's not correct, Chair. Objection, Chair, the evidence is to the contrary.
Objection. I'm looking to Mr. Bezos to see how he answers.
I'm sorry, is the question allowed, Mr. Chairman?
Objection be raised, and I'm waiting to hear your answer as to whether I should allow it or disallow it.
I submit
The
Mr.
objection is
Chairman.
raised. I want to hear your reply to the objection before deciding whether I should allow the objection or disallow the objection.
Yes, but Mr. Chairman, vicariously, the witness, if...
That wasn't the basis of the objection. The basis of the objection was you put it to the witness
Yes,
as a fact
yes.
that Lieutenant Colonel Scott had no public order policing experience at all.
That
was the basis of the objection.
Yes.
My recollection was he had done a course, but he had some experience, but I think it's also clear that his experience was fairly minimal, and he certainly wasn't aware of the provisions of Standing Order 262.
Yes.
So
This is
possibly if you reformulate the question,
Yes,
you may be able to avoid the objection.
Colonel Scott told us that he had minimal experience a long time ago in relation to crowd control and he was the architect of the plan. Did you know that?
I wouldn't know those. We have about 200,000 members of SABC. So to expect the Minister of Police to know each and every one what kind of skills they have, those are purely operational matters, and I may not venture into that.
Yes. Right. Now, assume that that evidence is correct. Did you know that Lieutenant Colonel Scott had been responsible for the killing of 11 of 12 people that he was supposed to arrest? Did you know that?
No, Chair, I object. Still, whether or not anybody is responsible for the death that occurred, it's a matter that is squarely within the...
No, that's not the question. The question is, did the witness know? I think we can predict what the answer will be. But did the witness know that Colonel Scott had, so it is alleged?
No, didn't this...
No. The question was, did the witness know that Colonel Scott had been responsible in the past, before he went to Marikana, for the killing of, I think, 11 or 12 people in a cash and transit heist case? That's the question.
But Chair,
Yeah. Let's see what the witness says. I think I know what the answer is going to be. Let's see if I'm right. Did you know that, Minister?
No, Chair.
I was right. Yes, carry on, Ms. Beaton.
Yes. Did you know that he received a commendation for that conduct?
Which conduct?
I think the
The
question
killing.
is he was involved in foiling a cash in transit heist, in the course of which 10 or 11 people died. You said you didn't know that. The next question is, did you know that he received a commendation for his conduct in foiling this cash in transit heist? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Well, Chair, as I said, You are not going to know each and every police officer that this one got this commendation and everything else. Now, all these questions, I see them very much related because they are very specific.
All the information that we have, this commendation was delivered to him during your being the
My
minister,
term of office.
the minister.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Well, I don't, because as I say, there are many people in the police. People are giving commendation on a continuous basis. So I really, I really wouldn't keep track on those specific matters.
And also, after Marikana, he was promoted from lieutenant colonel to colonel during your term of office. Who decides to promote deputy colonels to full colonels?
That would be an operational matter of the management of the police.
You wouldn't know about it?
No, people are promoted every day, Chairperson. I wouldn't know who's promoted today or tomorrow or yesterday. I mean, where would I start? And, no.
Are there no documents that come before the minister? Do you not have to sign a commission or something like that?
Well, the point...
Or maybe that you have to sign so many you can't remember who gets...
Well, it's precisely the point I'm making, Chair, that these things happen on a continuous basis. You cannot really keep track of who today has been commended or whatever. You wouldn't know. But that is happening, in the normal course of work of the police.
You yourself have expressed regret for the tragedy that occurred on the 16th. Did it occur to anybody in charge of promotions that in view of the role that he may have played in Marikana, it would not be good public relations for the police as a whole if he was promoted?
Sorry, Mr. Bezos, are you stating it as a fact that he was promoted because of what he did in Marikana? Or are you speculating? Or are you saying if it was so, it would be bad public relations? The question is a bit vague to me, and if it's vague to me, I think the minister may have similar problems. Reformulate the question more crisply.
What did I say? Having regard to the criticism of the police after the event, it wasn't good public relations for the police to promote Lieutenant Colonel Scott.
Chair, with respect, we're constrained. The Minister has repeatedly mentioned that these are operational matters, in respect of which he would not...
Asked a different question. He's being asked something which he can express a meaningful opinion, that as Minister he regards it as a public relations disaster, or as Minister he doesn't regard it as a public relations disaster, or it's more complicated. I mean, I don't think I can disallow the question.
I will leave it at that point, Mr. Chairman. Now, just give me the papers.
I didn't disallow your question. I said I can't disallow it. I said you can ask it.
Oh, I'm sorry. My hearing is letting me down.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I dropped my voice. I'll try to speak louder next time.
Thank you. What is your answer?
My answer is that matters of promotion are matters of management and control. Why he was promoted, for what reasons, I would have to be informed about that.
Now, I want to turn to another topic. Yeah. Has it been put in? No. One of the deceased, that the Legal Resources Center is acting for his grandfather and 5 other dependents, Mr. Shadrach Golokile Lendigwane. And it's exhibit.
No, it's a new exhibit.
It's a new exhibit which we want to put in, Mr. Chairman, as an exhibit. I'm told that it's
It have to be quadruple C6, I think, is the latest one. It's a statement, affidavit, in fact, I think,
yes.
by. We did have a copy, but I haven't got it in front of me. How did you spell your client's name?
Ledii.
So here it is. It's on the screen. Ledingwani.
Yes.
The affidavit of Mr. Ledingwani is witness statement of Mr. Ledingwani is admitted as exhibit quadruple C6.
Yes. Now, the statement sets out in paragraphs 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 21, and 22, which I will read out. He sets himself out that he's an adult male pensioner residing in Marikana. I'm the grandfather of John Papi Polwano Lendigwani, who was one of the people killed on the 16th of August 2012. I affirm the contents of the statement are true and correct, and except where I state otherwise with my personal knowledge and belief. John lived at 367 Selekong section, Wonderkop, where he had access to prepared electricity and water. He had lived in Selekong from 1994 after his father passed away. John lived in a house that I myself had built for him using materials that he had bought. In paragraph 8, on the day of the I'm sorry, I must read 4. John had been working at the Kari shaft of the London mine for about 5 years at a division known as K4 Engineering. He received a basic salary of 4,675 and a housing allowance of 1,850. In the period before the strike began, John had been working the afternoon shift. His last day at work was 11 August. After that, he started attending meetings at the mountain. He would attend daily and then return home. He would leave home in his car, and the number is HVN179LW, and parked it at the Wonderkop hostel. His uncle, Chihidi Letseleng, saw John leave home on the 16th of August 2012 and informs me that John was not carrying any weapons when he left home to go to the mountain, and that he did not carry any weapons on any other days that he went there. Paragraph 8. On the day of the incident, John left his car as usual. His uncle did not see any weapons. He was not carrying a stick or knobkiri. he went to the mountain to receive feedback from the striking workers' representatives.
Mr. Bezos, I must tell you that you've got 5 minutes left. But,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm just warning you.
It's very important.
all right, no, carry on. I'm just telling you.
Yes, I may have to ask.
Review the situation at the end of the 5 minutes, but carry on in the
We'll
meanwhile.
finish because it's very important.
I understand. Carry on.
Then, Mr. Chairman,
Well, Chair, the witness must also be told that this is not evidence. Even the quality of its here status, it's observable to all of us.
I'm sure the witness is bright enough to pick it up himself. Carry on, Mr. Bezos.
John, 21, John was a sole breadwinner supporting 6 dependents. There were his daughter, Senolo, Sasha, Rapu, and his niece, Bocha Copano Lendigwani, and his sister, Tenao Ludugwani. His brother, Regomandiwe Gift Leguana, and Moemisi Joseph Leguana. John's oldest brother is still at school, together with the other dependents and the niece who is at a creche. There are no other means of supporting John's dependents. The responsibility of support has fallen on me as a pensioner. Mr. Chairman, if need be, we will file supplementary affidavits insofar as any hearsay.
All right. Anyway, what is the question you want to ask the witness? That's the end
Mr.
of the
Chairman,
statement.
we want to show, with respect, a video, or rather the spot where he died. Can we please have that?
But what's the relevance of it as far as this witness is concerned? You're asking the witness these questions based upon the statement.
Well,
I take it the witness has got no knowledge of any of the facts
no knowledge
contained
of
in the
it,
affidavit.
Mr. Chairman.
So what is the bottom line? What's the question you're going to ask him based on? Ask him to assume these facts for the sake of his answer. What's the question going to be?
Yes, the question is going to be, Mr. Chairman, that he was not killed in scene 1 and approximately 100 meters away from there.
I understand that, and let's assume the minister is prepared to accept that for the purposes of his evidence. What question are you going to address to him?
I'm going to ask the witness, Mr. Chairman, what he has done. He has expressed some regret for the tragedy. What I want to ask the witness about is, what did he as a minister or the police under him did in order to assist this family after the death of a person who could not possibly be one of the persons that attacked the police?
This is on the assumption that the facts set out in the affidavit are correct. Make that assumption, please, Minister. I take it you wouldn't have done anything personally, but to your knowledge, have the police done anything to deal with the situation of the dependents left behind by those people who were killed, particularly if one accepts that all 3,000 or 4,000 of them weren't armed? Well, let's not talk about 3,000 or 4,000. Of those who were killed, there were 34. If one assumes that all of them were not armed, just making that assumption for the moment, have the police done anything to redress the situation in which their dependents are left? Is that your question?
That is the question that we want to examine, Mr. Chairman.
Let's have the Minister's answer.
Well, thanks, Chair. My recollection is that 44 people died in that week, And because of that, the President of the Republic appointed a commission so that when the commission has done its work, it will make a determination. And mind you, the commission was supposed to have done its job within 4 months. So it was to make a determination of what then has to be done, because talking about one person and leaving other 43, 43, I don't think it's going to help anyone.
I would have thought that the photograph that shows him as exhibit, or rather as, yes, on the photograph he is shown as victim O. And there is another one there, victim N. These people are not dead at the copy, and they are not dead bodies at scene 1. They are both shot in the head, and the evidence of the wound and the expert witness is that they were hit on the side or back of the head, and that was the cause of death, and that they actually, the nature of the wounds are that they were immediately fatal, so that they couldn't have run there from either scene 1 or from the copy. They're away from everyone else. One would have thought any sort of investigation in any detail in relation to these particular families, and particularly the one that we are acting for, would have been investigated as to whether or not they were guilty of any offense before they were shot, and if not, to take steps to compensate them.
I think the question is, do you know whether any investigation was done, apart from appointing this commission and all the work that's gone into the investigation materials that come before the commission? Do you know of any investigation of the kind suggested by Mr. Bezos relating to people in the position of the grandson of his client, with a view to giving them compensation in the interim, even before the commission has reported? Are you aware of any investigation of that kind?
Well, Chair, I'm aware that whenever police have transgressed or have committed an act, which is like the one we are talking about, there is IPIT, whose responsibility it is to follow up such things and investigate. And I know that IPIT from the beginning informed me that they are investigating, but they are also interacting with the commission. So that's what I know. Not for one individual or two, but for those cases which needed to be investigated.
Thank you. Your time is up, Mr. Bezos. Is there any final point you want to make? Give you a chance to make one more, ask one more question.
One more question. There is an independent police commission that is supposed to investigate matters. Has this matter been investigated by the commission? Or don't you know?
Well, as I said, Chair, that my understanding is that there is investigation. I may not know individuals who are being investigated.
Thank you. Mr. Bezos, that of course is correct. The IPID have cooperated with the officers of the Commission in relation to investigations that have been done. Anyway, thank you. That's your cross-examination. The next cross-examiner, I think, is Mr. Dumisa. It's Bezer for the families. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
According to my notes, an hour and a half. I hope
It's
that you
two
may
now,
be able
Mr.
to...
Chairman.
Sorry? Too much?
It's 2.
2 hours?
Yeah.
Well, I've been misinformed.
Well, it was
Well, let's not
originally-
argue about the time. Let's get on with your
Chair, I
cross-examination.
think that the families and MCO combined have a period of time, and that was the initial division. I'm not sure if that has changed.
Ah, so you're right.
between the
Well,
two.
anyway, you're obviously going to cross-examine at least till the end of the day, unless you
Yes,
somehow are
Mr.
able to shorten things, and we can then take stock at the end of the day tomorrow morning as to what's going to happen then.
I just-
Start
yeah.
now, please.
Sorry, Chairperson. Before Mr. Nsebeza starts, together with Ms. Nkosi Thomas, we prepared a revised version of Exhibit CCC 1.8. We've circulated it to the parties by email, but can we hand up 3 copies for yourselves?
We not make it CCC 1.7 because we took 1.7 away, remember? Well, if it's marked 1.8, I suppose it's too late.
Chair, I confirm that, except to add that it's actually quadruple, not triple.
Marked quadruple on the top. So we'll call it quadruple 1.8, and we will just note that 1.7 has been withdrawn. Thank you, Mr. Chancellor. Mr. Spencer, before you carry on, just one announcement I should have made when we started. It's been reported to me that somebody, either someone here or someone who has been in attendance here in the past, went away with, I'm sure it was done inadvertently, went away with the headphones and the receiver. And that's causing a bit of difficulty. And so I'd be grateful, I'm sure it wasn't done on purpose, so I'd be grateful if any one of you here did that, I'd be grateful if you please bring it back. And if none of the people here is responsible, but you know who was, I'd be grateful also if steps could be taken to bring it back, because there are consequences that follow from our not being able to give it back to the contractor. So please, as I say, if anyone here has taken the headphones and the receiver away and left them at home by mistake, please bring them tomorrow. If none of the people here is responsible, but you know who was, would you please tell the person concerned? Because I'm sure it's no use to the person away from here, and I'm sure it was just inadvertence. Yes, Mr. Zabez, on that happy note, you can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just want to, before I start, to note that I was informed that evidence in chief would be led in 1 or 1.5 hours. And I noted that it was actually led in 3 hours, give or take some minutes.
But there were a number of interruptions, you may remember, and problems we had. But
I know, Mr. Chairman, that I can always rely upon you to give me as
but of
much
course,
time.
it wouldn't have affected your prepared cross-examination because the evidence given was in accordance with the statements which you'd been given beforehand and which you took into account when you prepared your cross-examination. But let's not waste any further time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Minister, I need to make a declaration before we start with our cross-examination. And the declaration is that you and I are known to each other. I see you nod. Yes. In fact, when you were Minister of Police, there was in the employ of the ministry one Jenny Irish Koboshiane. Do you recall her?
Yes, I do.
And through Jenny Irish Koboshiane, I got to be told that in the exercise of the constitutional command in Section 208, you had established a civilian secretariat for the police service in your capacity as National Minister. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And the National Secretariat for the Police Service had an advisory body which was composed of civilians and I had the honor to serve in your civilian secretariat as one of the members. You recall that?
Yes, I remember.
And so I felt I need to make that declaration because, as you have noticed, sometimes there is heated debate in the triangle between the witness, the cross-examiner, and the chair, sometimes in the rectangle between the representative of SAPS, the cross-examiner, the witness, and the chair. And I just want you to relax and to understand that if that happens, it is because we are all performing our function.
Yes.
You do accept that. Now, Minister, I stand corrected. I was listening to your examination when you were being led in examination chief, and I did get a sense that you did get some briefing. But it seems correct to say that in none of your statements have you given a detail as to when you were briefed about what happened in Marikana. If I recall your evidence, it seems to me that there was the time that you were traveling and when you were told by phone as to what had happened. But it doesn't appear from your statements that there was a specific time when you were briefed about what had happened. Is it correct? Is it correct that you do not seem in your statements to have pinpointed a period when you would have been briefed about Marikana for the first time? Look, it's my observation because I want to go on.
I'm trying to
Yes.
check. I thought it's here.
Yes.
It is here in the statement. If you look at page 28 on the supplementary statement,
Yes. Where exactly, for instance, does it say you got the kind of briefing that I'm talking about?
The point that I think Mr. Sabez is busy with is in that paragraph that you referred us to, you tell us about the briefings, if one can use that expression, that you got about the tragedy. And in fact, in 85.5.5, you say she, that's the National Commissioner, stated she would get a full briefing and then brief me in turn thereafter. And then in 85.5.7, 85.5.6, you say you called with a view to obtaining a full briefing, but were unsuccessful. And then 85.5.7, you say you had a 68-second call during this time. You and the National Commissioner spoke briefly about the tragedy. And then you refer to two conversations that you had which were dealt with in paragraph 85.5.9, which these two conversations lasted for 88 and 213 seconds respectively. At that stage, we spoke about the tragedy, you say. Now, I can't see where you say that you thereafter received the full briefing that you'd asked for. And I take it what Mr. Zabeza wants to know is, did you in fact receive the full briefing thereafter, which you had been trying to get earlier? And the answer to that, if the answer to that is yes, then the next question would be, well, when did you receive that full briefing?
well,
Is that right, Mr. Zabeza?
Exactly, Mr. Chairman.
well, Chair, the 85.5.9 was the briefing. which the commissioner gave me. That is 2111. So she briefed me what happened on that day. As I said...
Sorry to interrupt you. What you're telling us then is that you received 2 briefings, of course, 2 telephone calls, which lasted 301 seconds, which means that they lasted for 5 minutes and 1 second. Is that the only briefing you got? Combined briefings lasting 5 minutes and 1 second.
As Chair, you'd recall that in this interaction, the National Commissioner was to go to Marikana. So she was briefed of what has happened. So she then in turn briefed me. But where the full briefing of everything what happened on the day happened the following day.
Right. But am I correct in putting the question to you, which is what I put to you, that you do not seem to be saying anything in either of your statements other than the reference to a total of 5 minutes of briefing about when you were briefed about what had happened in Marikana? I'm talking about the statements. I'm not talking about your knowledge of what happened thereafter. Is it correct that we can put it as a fact that in your statements, in neither of your 2 statements, you do not say when you were briefed about what had happened?
No, it is.
It's not a trick question.
No,
you know.
it's not. No, it's not at all. Yeah. No, as you can see, the statement. What I've just said now is not in the statement.
Yes. It's okay.
Yes.
It's okay. It's
Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Now, if we could put up Exhibit FF5, that's a statement that was made to the media and had been drafted during the night of the 16th of August after the events. You see that statement. General Pierre pronounces on mine unrest. You see that?
Yes.
Now, we are going to come back to that statement, but can we please put up Exhibit A-VTW Exhibit AAA. Mr. Chairman, we are not going to play it, but that is the footage of the National Commissioner when she was making the statement to the media. I just want to orientate the minister. Can we put up that exhibit, please? Exhibit AAA, where General Pierre is addressing the media. Then VTW-12, there is, I don't know what these things are called, _12, _01. I'm sure you are familiar with this footage, Minister. And that is the time. Perhaps we must play the...
How long does it go on for?
It's about 1 minute for 8 seconds.
All right, we'll invest that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would like to hear the
help if we had some
voice.
sound, because I can't lip read very well.
when we started deploying the barbed wire fencing, the group of protesters armed with dangerous weapons and firearms hastily flanked the vehicles deploying the wire. You would have seen that history. They were met by members from the police who tried to report the advance with water cannons, tear gas, as well as stun grenades. Ladies and gentlemen, the attempt was unsuccessful, and the police members had to employ force to protect themselves from the charging group. The dispersion action had commenced at this time, and the armed protesters were driven from their stronghold to a high bushy ground close to the vicinity. The police members encircled the area and attempted to force the protesters out of the bushy area by means of water cannons, rubber bullets, and stun grenades. The militant group stormed towards the police, firing shots and wielding dangerous weapons. Police retreated systematically and were forced to utilize maximum force to defend themselves. The total deaths of the protesters currently stands at 34, with more than 78 injured.
Right. Now, did you see the media statement before it was delivered by the Commission?
I saw
or
the
don't you
media
recall?
statement.
You saw it?
It was sent to me.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And when the minister delivered the media statement...
That's not an answer to the question. It was sent to you. Did you have a chance to read it?
Yes, it was sent to me. I read the statement, yes.
And when the minister was delivering it, did you listen to her?
No, the commissioner, I think.
Sorry, Minister.
Provincial Commissioner.
When the commissioner was delivering the statement, did you listen to her?
No.
Did
No.
you listen to her later on?
I don't recall listening to this particular statement.
There was one, really, that's
Yes.
made relevant to this incident.
Well, that's why I'm listening to it now.
Are you saying you didn't ever hear this kind of footage, the delivery of this media statement, before today?
Well, as I said, I didn't have time or I didn't see it being delivered.
No, it's not a crime. You say, I just wanted to know whether you
Yes.
had seen it before,
Yeah.
before it was delivered, and you have told the commissioner and that you did. Now, if we could put up triple F4 on the screen. This, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, is an internal brief that was prepared during
This
the
is
same
the document
night.
that was prepared the night of the 16th and
Yes.
sent to the president who
Exactly,
was in
Mr.
Mozambique.
Chairman. Yes. It was a document that was prepared for purposes of briefing you, of bringing the president, and of... Yes.
Is it correct that the document was prepared for briefing you? I know it was. The evidence was it was sent to I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was with the President at a meeting in Mozambique on the night of the 16th of August. Did you see it also?
Yes, I did.
Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, whether, I don't know, because I was just going to put the question just for clarity's sake. is that the internal brief document that was prepared in order to brief you, the President, and the Interco, the Department of Internal Relations, International Relations.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. When did you receive the document?
I must think now. I don't recall.
Your point of departure must obviously be the 16th. In relation to, because you were going to be briefed about what had happened, unless you were briefed about what was going to happen.
No, which is not possible.
I'm going to take the tea, German, in a minute, but before we do that, perhaps you can help us on this aspect. We understand the documents were prepared fairly late in the evening of the 16th, of the 16th, yes.
Yes.
And was sent off, I think, evidence is in the early hours of the morning, presumably just after midnight, to Mozambique, or presumably to Pretoria first and then to Mozambique for the President. Did you see it that night, or did you only see it the next day?
Definitely not that night. It would be the next day, where there was a full briefing in Marikana.
Now, that full briefing in Marikana, did you go to Marikana on the 17th?
On the 17th.
Yes.
Yes.
And did you see the document when you were there?
I think I first saw it there because this is where the briefing of everything from the 10th, if you like, with all the documentation, this is including the kind of work which was done from Monday by the police,
yes.
Electronically.
Yes. And did you see this document before the National Commissioner gave the media briefing that we've just seen on the video, or did you only see it afterwards? Or can't you remember?
No, I can't remember.
You can't remember. Can we take Patia German now, Mr. Sibes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. But
Thank you.
just right, before we take the teenage gentleman, Colonel, Minister, I'm demoting you every time.
He's withdrawn the promotion very quickly.
Minister, you know, when we come back, I just want you to try and recall whether you did get an oral briefing about this document, and if so, who it was that gave the oral briefing. Then we'll get the answers after we have reflected upon them. I want to be fair to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks.
We must try to be back in 15 minutes. I know it's not easy, but we must try very hard. have ruled that no photographs should be taken while the Commission is sitting. And if that ruling is not complied with, I shall have to take action. You're still bound by your affirmation, Minister? Mr. Sebez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, have you thought, Mr. Minister, whether there was anyone who orally briefed you, whether that night or even the following day, if there was anyone who orally briefed you?
About what had happened
Yes.
the previous day, yes.
Who was it? Who briefed you orally?
It was the National Commissioner and the team. The Provincial Commissioner was there.
Yes.
The Deputy Provincial Commissioner was also there.
And as you said, that
The Deputy Provincial Commissioner, there are a number of Deputy Commissioners. I presume you mean General Mpembe.
General Mpembe, yes.
and that is when you said there was a fair amount of detail starting from Friday the 10th
Yes.
and until the events of the 16th.
Yes.
Now, if we could just look at F4, because I just want us to go to certain paragraphs there. Now, this was the briefing document which had also been prepared by the same team that had also prepared the media statement, which is F5. Now we'll come to F5. Now on F4, on page 2 thereof, if we went to the 5th paragraph or the 2nd page, you see that there is a paragraph that starts with the dispersion. The dispersion action had commenced at this time, and the protesters were driven from their stronghold to a high bushy ground in the close vicinity. The police members encircled the area and attempted to force the protesters out by means of water cannons, rubber bullets, and stun grenades. The police advanced to arrest the armed protesters, resulting in police officers having to again employ force to defend themselves at close quarters. This resulted in 13 more protesters' deaths. Now, in fact, we should start with the paragraph above that to read the second one in context, because there's a flow there. I'm sorry about that, Mister. Do you see where it says, when the police started deploying the barbed wire fencing, a militant group from the protesters armed with weapons, pangas, spears, axes, and firearms hastily flanked the vehicles deploying the wire. They were met by members from the police who tried to repulse the advance with stun grenades. The attempt was unsuccessful, and the police members had to employ force to protect themselves from the charging group. This resulted in the death of 16 protesters, with 13 wounded at that scene. You see that?
Yes.
Now, you will know, but if you don't, I will tell you that there is common understanding here that that is what has commonly come to be referred to here, the Commission, as Scene 1. In other words, the first group of people, mine workers or protesters, were killed in that first volley, which is probably what you saw on television before you came for the briefing. Yes. Do you understand that?
Yes.
So this this briefing document clearly states what happened in scene 1. And then in the second paragraph, or the paragraph following that, it goes on to mention that the police members encircled the area and attempted to force the protesters out by means of water cannons, rubber bullets, and stun grenades. The police advanced to arrest the armed protesters, resulting in police officers having to again employ force to defend themselves at close quarters. This resulted in 13 more protesters' deaths, with 15 more wounded at the second incident. So that paragraph, you would agree with me, states another incident where more deaths of protesters occurred, and what it has come to be known in the commission as scene 2, you would accept that there was a second scene where there were more deaths, according to this briefing document. Do you accept that?
Yes, yes.
Yes. And you understood that to be the position that was communicated to you when you were getting this briefing. In fact, if you read the paragraph, not the one-liner after the paragraph that we had read, the paragraph that says the total death toll of the protesters currently stands at 29, with more than 71 critically injured and others being treated for minor wounds. So that seems to be clear that is what the briefing document was saying to you, that there were two scenes, and that those two scenes, scene 1 and scene 2, there were fatalities, and as at that stage, the fatalities were standing at 29 and with those numbers injured. That is what you understood when you were getting the briefing on that day. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if we went to triple F5, now, that in a nutshell is the press briefing document. It complements what you saw in the clip. It's the press briefing that she gives, and which we would argue, if you wouldn't accept it, correlates to what we saw in the footage that we played a little while ago when we commenced cross-examination. I want to draw your attention to the second page thereof, to the paragraph that begins with when the police started deploying. You see that paragraph?
Yes.
It's the 7th, the 3rd last, and the 8th, second last paragraphs on that page. There it is. When the police started deploying the barbed wire fencing, the group of protesters armed with dangerous weapons and firearms hastily flanked the vehicles deploying the wire. They were met by members from the police who tried to repose the advance with water cannon, tear gas, as well as stun grenades. The attempt was unsuccessful, and the police members had to employ force to protect themselves from the charging group. You see that? Now, I will want to argue, and this is where I want to get your view. That the media statement doesn't create the impression that there were two sins. Do you agree? The media statement by General Pierre.
Yes, yes. The second paragraph after that, is it not talking to the second part?
Yes, but you see, it doesn't distinguish in the manner in which the briefing document is done. And I'll tell you why it is important that a clear impression should have been created. You know, and I think all of us do know, that scene one had been captured in local and international media. It's one of those scenes that were shocking and they went viral throughout the world. Yes. So I'm saying, and I put it to you for your reaction, that whereas the briefing document, and this was the briefing document to you, is clear, and you don't have to hunt around to find what it says. It says scene one, this is what happened at scene one. Scene two, this is what happened in scene two. You don't get the same messaging from the police commissioner's media briefing. Would you agree with me? You can't, from her statement,
yes,
tell that there were two incidents, each of which had its own toll of deaths. And you must have been aware of that. Or if you were not, I'm bringing it to your attention now. And I'm asking if you didn't get that impression when later on you saw her deliver that media statement. And reading it, and because I want to ask you, did it not occur to you that?
Well, they are not identical. I agree with you. Including other things like numbers of people who died.
Yes, yes. But the significant difference, as I'm suggesting to you, is that the impression that is getting created here is that there was a mission by the police there to encircle, they used barbed wire, to encircle workers. The workers attacked them, and in order to defend themselves against this charging horde of people who are armed with dangerous weapons, pangas, assegais, this, that, and the next thing, they took action, and that resulted in the deaths. Now, that is the media briefing. And it coincides with what the media had captured. Do you agree? It doesn't tell you that sometime thereafter, people had run into the mountains, people had been sought to be taken out of the mountains and the hills by means of water cannon and what have you. Again there they charged, and it resulted in additional deaths. You don't get that from the media briefing. Is that correct? Is it a fair assessment of a comparison between the two? It's not just a question of artificial difference, you know, we don't mention so many and so many.
Well, this is what is being published. What you are saying is what is out there in the public eye.
And I'm saying it's a material omission. It amounts to misleading the public, which is expecting the commissioner to tell the nation and the world as exactly what happened.
Chair, may we object at this stage? It's not clear why the minister should take responsibility for this alleged omission in a statement that he did not write and dealing with circumstances that arose in his absence, Chair. So we really have to object to this. It's unfair to the witness.
Mr. Sebeza, how do you respond to the objection?
Mr. Chairman, the witness has been fairly candid. He saw the statement when it was made. He saw the briefing document. He may not have seen the statement. He doesn't recall. That was the evidence. He doesn't recall whether he saw the statement being made by the general. But he had seen it. And our argument will be that the same briefing team that had done the briefing document is the same briefing team that did the media statement. The minister was aware, he has indicated that there was going to be a media briefing. He was fully advised. If you look at the media briefing, F5 and the briefing document, the internal document, they all categorize, or they purport to do so, what happened from the 10th, Friday the 10th of August to the 16th. So what I'm putting to my learned, what my response to my learned friend is that the minister is not being taken to task about. He is the minister in charge of the police. He has been given a full briefing now, orally as well as in terms of these documents. And we should assume, because of the scale of the tragedy, that he is conscious of what is going to be communicated to the public. Now, how on earth it can be argued that...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you going to contend, in other words, at the end of the evidence, that the minister can be criticised personally for what you suggest are fundamental or material conflicts between the two statements, which he had seen, and that therefore, in as much as he allowed them to go forward, he can be criticised? That's your argument. Whether the criticism be good or bad is another matter. But are you going to criticise him on that basis?
That's exactly the point, Mr. Chairman.
Well, if that's so, because surely it's only fair to the witness that Mr. Sebeza should put the problem to him so that he can deal with the criticism which is going to be directed against him at the end, unless he comes up with an explanation which is of such a nature that induces Mr. Sebeza not to persist in that criticism. That must be fair, surely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whilst my learned friend is trying to find another basis for objection. May I proceed on this basis? Minister, you see...
Sorry, am I not called upon to rule on the objection? You're going to reformulate the question in the hope that
No,
you
I thought you had ruled, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry? I haven't ruled. I asked you a question. I then asked her what her answer to it was, and she didn't reply. So,
Chair, except to add that when one has regard to the number of fatalities, it's very clear that there was no intention to conceal or mislead the public, but be that as it may, Chair.
Well, that's a matter of the point to which this way. Well, now, I think of the circumstances, regard being had to the fact that the question is, in effect, a prelude to a criticism which may well be mounted against the minister at the end, unless the minister's answers of such a nature as to induce or persuade Mr. Sebeza not to persist with the criticism. It's only fair it should be put to him so he gets a chance to deal with it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Minister, just so that there is no misunderstanding between me and you, there clearly is one between me and my learned friend. I'm not contesting the numbers of fatalities, because as we all know, the number was not 29 on that day. At the end of the day, the people who got killed, the miners who got killed, the number was 34. That's not the point. The point with which, fortunately, the two of us have agreed is that the briefing document is truly reflective of two scenes, in each of which there were fatalities. That we are agreed upon, isn't it? Scene 1 is number of fatalities. Scene 2 is number of fatalities. That much we have agreed upon. Now, we say the media statement, however you read it, creates the impression that what started with the barbed wire, the encirclement, the alleged attack by the mine workers or protesters at the police and the police line, the police having to do what they had to do, the fatalities. That is the impression that is being created by the media briefing. Now, you have considered that this is so. Now, the question that I would like to put to you, to be fair to you, is whether you were aware, as you are aware now, that what was being communicated by the general to the nation, and I dare say to the world, was materially misleading if it created the impression that the fatalities occurred only at scene 1. Would you agree with that?
You know, the two statements, as I said earlier on, are not identical. Not only on the matter we are referring to of scene 1, scene 2, but also, even though you say, as far as we are concerned, is not important, also the number of fatalities themselves. So when you look at the two, you see here that some things are still in a process, or being processed, as it were, because they really are not identical, and that you won't miss it.
So what are you saying about the numbers, perhaps, if we could?
As we have just said, that at one point it's 29, on the other is 34. I also said, excuse me, earlier on in my statement here, that I got 28, for instance. So the number kept on changing.
But if we went to triple F5, and let's look on the second page. The 7th and the 8th. Can we go to that?
The moment we've got triple F5, I think you really mean triple F4.
Oh, yeah.
What you mean is, if one reads what is said in regard to the numbers and so on,
yes.
on triple F4, then you can use that as a basis for comparing it to triple F5. I think you've got triple F5 on the
yes.
on the,
no,
on the screen
I was,
already.
I
You
was
want triple
looking
F4
everywhere, Mr. Chairman. In fact, no, I need that page, because you'll see the media briefing was already right. Do you see that, about the fatalities? The total death toll of the protesters currently stands at 34. With more than, So when she delivered that statement, she already knew the correct number of deaths from 2 sins, sin 1 and sin 2. And therefore this statement, the media statement, was delivered later than had been than the internal briefing document had been compiled. So I don't know what I'm getting at is this. In fact, you highlighting the differences between the fatalities actually makes the point I'm making. That the internal briefing document, as at the stage that it was compiled, mentioned 27 or so. The later document actually says 34. So when it was delivered, it was giving the exact number that has historically been accepted to have been the number of the people who got killed by the police in 2 sins. And what we are saying...
Mr. Beza, sorry to interrupt you. Mr. Semenya has turned his light on.
Chair, the document we have on the screen has what I would call paragraph 3 starting from the bottom. It clearly is reference to sin 1. But the following paragraph is clearly dealing with sin 2 when there are people who are going to higher bushes. And it is also talking about water cannons being used there as well as it did in the paragraph before. So this impression of misleading is not obvious to me, Chair, and I would seek clarification.
Well,
Mr.
I
Chairman,
don't know, you have to make it clear to Mr. Beza, to Mr. Semenya, you just have to make it clear to the witness. But perhaps you can bear in mind what Mr. Semenya has said.
Yes, I will.
And
Mr.
make it clear to the Minister also.
Yes, I will. The Minister didn't seem to have any difficulty in understanding what I'm putting to him. In fact, that horse is a significant distance from the stable, because we are agreed that where the media briefing, unlike the internal briefing document, is not fuzzy about the stages. It says at a particular stage, in the first stage, these were the facilities. The second stage, these were the facilities. And if we have to argue about it at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, we will. That is our proposition.
But put a question to the witness so that he can deal with it.
Yes.
And then you can perhaps move on.
Yes. So, now, the question I was put... Yes, no, I'll take into account what this... Yes. Now, look, if we had to do the exercise, but we would do it, just that my time will be compromised. But if we went paragraph by paragraph in the briefing document, paragraph in the media statement, what I am putting out to you will be clear. But this is what I want to ask you, and the question is, you are now clear in terms of the answer that you gave earlier on, that there is a difference between the internal briefing document, insofar as that internal briefing document identifies 2 distinct sins and says how many people were killed in each of the 2 sins. And the media briefing, which does not separate the number of people who were killed in the first sin and the number of people who were killed in the second sin. even though it gives a correct total of people who were killed. Now, were you aware at the time that there is this difference which I'm highlighting to you?
Well, not as clearly as we are putting it, because, as I said earlier on, that the two documents are not identical. But the two paragraphs, which comes one after the other, whilst not clarifying that this is not sin 2, but it does say that at this time, and it goes on and on and on in explaining whatever is being explained here.
I don't think I can take this further.
You put the point at great
Yes.
length to the witness. And such material as you
Yes.
have on record, based an argument on, you've got. So
Yes.
let's move on to another point.
Yes. Now, I want to. Mr. Chairman, okay, I was just. There is a topic, Mr. Chairman, which we know we will not be dealing with, and it's a topic that might be dealt with by other parties. Mr. Chaskalson probably is going to deal with it. And if Mr. Chairman, you will allow me some leeway to put a few questions in relation thereto. And it is this. Were you aware before the operation on the 16th, or put it away, between the 13th and the 16th, were you aware that at Marikana, units were deployed which, as their arsenal of weapons, use R1 rifles, R5 rifles, R4 rifles? What we have come to accept through an expert of the SAPS in this commission as military issue. Were you aware?
Well, I was informed when I inquired about the deployment that there were going to be personnel or members of SABC deployed there. I didn't ask a specific question on which unit is there and which one is not there.
Now, from your answer, I gather that you are conceding, having been aware ahead of or during the deployment of the units, that some of those units would be armed with R1 rifles, R5 rifles, rifles which in ordinary parlance are referred to as military weapons. Am I correct in that assessment of your response? You were aware that those rifles would be used, or at least there were units that were deployed to deal with this situation that were armed with those rifles? And I promise I'm not going to go to criminals and whatever you, Begitel and all of that. I just want to ask you.
When they are, let me start this way. I took through the commission on a specific matter which had been brought to my attention. And it was brought to my attention. In the main, having warm bodies on the ground. Insofar as that is concerned, the deployment and the addition of members of SABC, I was aware of that. And as I said, I never inquired who will be there, who will not be there, because the main thing for me was that we need police on the ground to avert any fatality.
Let's test that a little bit. It must have been reported to you that 2 police officers had been fatally wounded on the 13th in an encounter with protesters, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it must have been a matter of concern for you as Minister of Police, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And I can take another hour if I had one, trying to get a sense of how it affected you, what you did, what you ordered the police commissioner to do. We'll not get in there. What I'm trying to get at is this. After the 13th, I'm not saying the incidents that had happened before the 13th were not important. I mean, security police people had been killed and incinerated, and there were all sorts of things. There were a number of people who had to kill. Mine workers had died in that skirmish on the 13th. But can I put it to you that on the 13th and thereafter, immediately thereafter, when once your own members, when members of the police service, it was called a police force now again, but when members of the police service were killed, I want to put it to you that it became a matter of concern for you. I mean, the emails are indicative of that. And this is what I want to ask you. What are you saying to the commissioners here, that you didn't want to know the details of how this matter was going to be contained, what units were going to be used, what were they going to be using, what weapons will they be using in order to contain the situation? Surely, you are not suggesting that, are you?
Chair, I don't think that you are suggesting that I was supposed to be asking what sort of weapons are going to be used or what weapons would be carried after the police have been killed, which you wouldn't have asked before the police were killed. No, frankly, I wouldn't be asking about the kind of weapons which would be carried. I would rely on the experience of the police in ensuring that there is public order in gatherings, as has happened in the past.
You see, Mr. Minister, my question is not really dissimilar to the poser that was put to you by the chairman, relevant to whether or not the police commissioner had briefed you. about what was going to happen. You are a minister of police, 2 members of which have been hacked to death. And you know that there is a reaction that your department must have to this. Because you are informed by the fact that members of the police service have been killed. Now, I want to suggest to you that you must have a rethink about your response. Because I want to put it to you that if you didn't inquire, you were derelict in your duty at seeking to establish what the detail of the deployment is going to be in reaction to the situation that it arisen.
How do you respond to that question?
No, I still stand, Chair, that the Minister of Police is not the person who's supposed to ask police how many guns you are having and so on. It's not my problem.
That's an operational detail.
It is an operational detail.
Right.
So I can't be expecting. In fact, I differ that it's a dereliction of duty, because that's a purely operational matter of a police service who would know what to do in any kind of situation where they are interacting with the public.
Yes, I understand that. Can I ask you another question from a slightly different angle? I take it as Minister you were aware of the equipment that the various units had in the police service?
Yes, I am.
And did you know that there were a substantial number of R5s which were in the police inventory, as it were? And there were units who were heavily reliant on R5. Did you know that?
Well, there are units who use those types of equipment anyway.
Now, those units were, amongst others, were the TRT, the NIU, and the SDF. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you know whether any of those, in respect to the units that were sent to Marikana, did you know whether they were TRT units?
Well, as I said, Chair, I didn't inquire, but I know that in certain situations, police would deploy different units, including TRT, STF, as you have said.
NIU.
Come again?
And NIU, National Intervention Unit.
And NIU, yes.
And those units are the ones that are equipped with R5s?
Yes, they are.
As far as the POP units are concerned, the evidence is that I think every 8, they all have sidearms, pistols, and one of them has an R5. So you've got POP people, 1/8 of whom have R5s, and then you have STFs, NIUs, and TRTs. That's the position. But I'm just correcting that. Sorry, Mr. Nsebeza, you've got chance for 2 more questions, and then we'll adjourn until tomorrow.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps you take the adjournment now.
All right. We'll adjourn until tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.